What's up, Busted Knuckle Club? We've got a Plenum Spacer here. One with a Blox Racing 5/16. It's like a thermoplastic. It's not the fancy aluminum CNC machine that you get from Z1. This is going to have a link down in the description. This was only 60 bucks. Plus taxes, fees, shipping, and all that. And this was so cheap. Blox Racing was also blowing out a fuel pump. Let's get this out of here. Not that I need a fuel pump or need to install this at the moment, but yeah, this bad boy, I forgot what the fuel flow rate was, but it was significantly more than stock, obviously. And that was also $40. Bag of goodies for the intake manifold install. These are not, it's a nice hex head, that's great. These are not the standard socket set that you're gonna need. I hope, you get in the torque specs on these in inch pounds. I've got a socket set for this, but yeah, just be aware you're gonna need your own socket set to get the torque specs right on this. Is that unless you want to just wing it with an Allen key set, just go for it. 200-pound gorilla on one of these, I'm sure it'll do real well. They do not ship this with a gasket. I bought, and this is out in the garage. I'll have to take a look at that in a moment when I open up the cold air intake. It does not come with a gasket. There is not a built-in gasket. It is just a piece of plastic, thermoplastic. So I'm glad I bought a Felpro kit, and I think it was like 20 or 40 bucks off of Amazon. It's the lower intake manifold kit, so it's got the piece in the center here. I'll just cut that out with a pair of scissors. I'm going to retain the stock as long as it comes off right. Retain the stock one. Slap this on top and then put the plenum cap, the intake manifold cover, back on top of the new gasket on top of this, and then yeah, I'll show you in the process. So yeah, let's get cracking. I think this is all that I need, aside from realizing that my 1-minute gasket maker RTV is completely shot because I haven't used it in, I don't know, 10 years. Probably got a shelf life of maybe 6 months to a year, so that's going to be a trip. But there's no reason why I can't get started on all this. So I've got my intake Plenum Spacer here from Blox Racing. Like I said, link in the description below. I've got my little Aquanet hydro cover. It's supposed to be hydrophobic fabric to cover the cone filter, because this is going down in front of the bumper here in this general location. Whole reason why I'm making this video is no one has done a video showing the bumper off and where exactly the filter sits under here with AEM. Link in the description below. So I wanted to do that for everybody else so you can see the layout of this versus watching the Z1 videos. Their filter, I'll show you when the bumper's off, kind of goes over and it sits right underneath here. We'll see how this one orientates, because no one's shown a video of it. And even the description, the PDF that AEM sends, which is a K&N product, by the way, no one shows it. No one shows an image of it. So don't mind the DeWalt set. I got that on clearance. Not necessarily my go-to, but it's going to be great for road trips. And hopefully I don't need my 1/2-inch impact doing a cold air intake and a Plenum Spacer. I think we'll be in some trouble if I get to that. So yeah, I'm going to start breaking stuff down. And I don't think I'm going to be using this or the throttle body gasket. I'm going to save those for later. This guy, I was just going to clip here and here to use as the gasket on top of the spacer. But we'll get into it in a little bit, and I'll go ahead and fire up the video once I get some stuff taken apart.
So that's bad. It's really easy. You can use an engine, but I'm going to make it on. I'm not going to so yeah.
So that didn't look too bad, considering it's only like 68,000 miles on this car. It's pretty damn clean. I could use an engine clean, but I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm definitely not putting the cover back on. I'm gonna mount that up on the garage wall. So, yeah.
So one thing that the Blox Racing fails to mention in their one-page instructions, which, you know, Plenum Spacer shouldn't be too terribly difficult. I saw that this was threaded, put the bolt here, realized it didn't line up with the plate. Thought maybe that's why it was on discount for 60 bucks. No, it's because I'm supposed to take the stud out here. The stud is a reverse Torx. What size is it? E5. You got to back those out, and then you can put the studs in. So I'm going to do that real quick, but that's not in the instructions. Just almost user error on my part. I was going to drill this out and try and get that down there, and it's like, well, there's nothing for it to bolt to. Why would I do that? It's right here. And the same thing for this side. That stud, it's got to come out. Super easy if you got the right part, the right bit. E5, I've got blue point, and it gripped on the first pull. Before closing it all up. Didn't know that the bolts are extra short here, and they don't bother to give you replacements for that, but they do for the rest of them. So out of 18, that means you're getting 16 total clamping. Should be plenty for just an intake. Granted, you don't want any air gaps, air leaks, but I've got the mass airflow sensor part of the intake taken off because that's going to be reused with the AEM system. I know the Z1 you just bolted onto the new one. This one, it actually reuses this section itself, maintains that factory section, and then you just bolt it together with this handy adapter, but we'll get to that. So the next step for me, cleaning that out, doing the torque set for this, and then removing the bumper, and then I'll get into actually doing the intake manifold, the intake, cold air intake. Looking forward to it. All right, gearheads and car nerds, I can already tell you I'm not a fan of this install. The AEM, now I know why people were complaining that it hydrolocks their engine. In the Z1, I mean, obviously it's going to happen with the Z1 too, but lesser so because they put theirs here with the cold air, not the short ram. The AEM, I don't know why they did this. This is so stupid. They go through down here, so I have to remove the wiring harness that they show in the pictures. That's normally sits like right about there. You move it, and you're supposed to put this bracket in, and then somehow get this to line up and land in that hole to hold this up, and that routes in front of your tire. Now that's great, but it's louvered. I mean, one engineer thought this is a great idea when you have a perfectly good hole right here to route there. Props to you, Z1, for seeing the obvious route. No, they decided to go down here. So I'm going to install it and show you afterwards. I'm not too worried because this is a convertible in Washington. I keep it in the garage. I take it out when it's sunny, and oh no, maybe I get a little bit of water, but I'm not driving through torrential downpours. They do have, and I'll link it in the description below, a bypass valve that you're supposed to, that they recommend installing for wet weather. This isn't a race car. It's also not a daily driver. That's my work truck. So I think I'm going to pony up for the bypass valve, or really bite the bullet and spend another $300 on the Z1 cold air and have to do this all over again. The bumper removal, quickest video I found online. I've removed the 370 Nismo from my buddies. It's a little different because he's got pop clips on the side. The 350, there's 3 bolts on each side. I'll just link his video down below in the description also, because I watched his video and it made it super easy for me. Already having done it before in a 370, I kind of knew it was just bolts in the front and the bolts on the sides. Didn't realize that there were bolts at the top on this, so glad I watched the video instead of reefing on it and wondering why I bent my fenders with the bolts attached. Anywho, I am going forward with this because I do have a little Aquanet hydrophobic sock to put over it. I do not trust this to solve the amount of water that may incur here, with the fact that the tire is right there and the wheel well is right there, like the worst. I mean, and just put it down at the bottom and just scoop the water up, for Christ's sake. Anywho, back to wrenching. I'll get those on pretty quickly. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to go take this out for a ride before the rain sets in. I'm going to try, but so here's what I'm not a huge fan of. So Z1s, I keep comparing because I've been debating for 6 months on which one to get, and I finally settled on this one because it was $219 out the door with free shipping on Amazon. But I've had the Z1 in my cart for 6 months, along with a clutch and a bunch of other fun stuff for this car. I got this because I thought, okay, this is a cold air too. No one has made a video about where this filter is installed, other than just this top view that we're seeing right here. No one in the videos that I've seen have actually taken the bumper off either. I did do a deep dive. I just, searched YouTube, and most of them that I found just show this. That's great. What about the front though? So this is why people are not a huge fan of this. That's where the air filter is. That's not serviceable. Not that the Z1, it kind of is actually. You can, no, you do. I'm looking at it, thinking it through. Scratch that. No, you do have to take the bumper off for the Z1 too. But I mean, so the Z1 comes out here and it sits underneath here. And granted, you got to take the brace off and the foam. It's super easy to do all of this. We did this for an oil cooler for Bayo Networks 370. Link in the description below. Been helping him a ton on that car over the last year or so. This, I mean, I can't get to it without taking the bumper off, the fender off. That Aquanet, I don't trust that. With all the louvers right there. Seriously? Louvers. Tire. Water. I'm gonna drive it, of course. We'll see how it does, but I'm definitely thinking twice now, even though it's a convertible. Thinking twice now about driving this in the rain ever. But well, until I get the bypass valve, which I don't think they have a picture of in the instructions. No, they don't. I'm on the last page. They don't. But they tell you where to cut, and I think you got to cut it like right here. Or maybe they want you to cut, yeah, it's supposed to be down here low. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of, so they use the stock mass airflow sensor housing along with the sensor, which, the Z1 uses the sensor, but it has its own bung that you bolt it into. Granted, I didn't take a picture of it. There's security bolts on there. It's like a Torx with a little pin in the center. Security Torx or whatever it's called. That, you'll need special bolts for that, bits for that, but I like the idea of having a welded bung on there instead of having this. I mean, I know it's factory. The engineers from Nissan have done a great job with this engine. They're engineers. They know this plastic can handle simple airflow, but you're bolting this to this and then adapting this. It just looks like garbage compared to the Z1. A lot cleaner look, in my opinion, after watching all the install videos. Definitely not putting the cover back on. You're just trapping heat, and for what? Yeah, it looks cool, but I'm just going to hang that up in the garage. I'm going to put the strut brace on and get the bumper on, and maybe I will take it out for a drive. I know it's supposed to rain all day tomorrow and then sunny again Friday, but we'll see. Anywho, I'll let you know how she drives. So final results, I am happy with the install of the cold air intake by AEM and the Blox Racing 5/16 spacer. Definitely netted 8 to 10 horsepower, and it's definitely in the low end, which is great. I love it. I had to do spacers down here. They didn't include it in the Blox Racing, as I think I talked about earlier in the video, but I ran around to a couple different Ace Hardwares and McClendons to gather all these, because each one only had like 2 or 3, but you need 4 per side, and there'll be a link in the description below for the type of spacer I used. It's a machine bushing, I believe, zinc coated steel, and 1/4 inch is all I needed to get the clearance here. As I was driving around, I knew I needed the spacers, but I put it all together and just to test it out, I was driving it around, and you could definitely hear this rubbing on the aluminum intake manifold. So this is driving it very gingerly, very careful on the gear shifts and all that. Definitely a lot better with the spacers. And you can span this out a bit too. I did that already, and it still wasn't enough to clear the extra 5/16 added. So spacers plus spanning this out a little bit, because there's a little bit of slop in these holes for adjustment. So I was able to get that all dialed in. And the cold air intake sounds great. I still want to upgrade to the Z1. I think that'll be for after Bayos and my road trip in June, July. Definitely be adding a cold air from Z1 on this build. I am happy with the gains I've got from this, but I definitely want to relocate the filter up here. I really don't like having it way down there. Let's take a peek in there, make sure it's still not enough light. Just make sure the filter's still on there and it hasn't fallen off. Yeah, I'm happy with the gains and the install. I mean, I really can't wait to put this factory wiring harness. I've just got some tape, but the actual pin there is holding onto this bracket they had me install. And then this here, I'm not a huge fan of this rubber. It's like a double bolt with rubber in between to mount this too, but then the AC line bracket down here is pretty loose. So I'm not sure how exactly you tighten a bolt that's embedded in rubber that's facing down going into the rail here. And this guy, they didn't have any other way. So this is supposed to be pulled off so you can route this down, because this, I believe this is part of the ABS system, is supposed to be mounted down there. You're supposed to pull it off and put it up here. I don't like how loose that is. So I'd like to put all of this back to factory and then run the Z1 cold air through the opening that the Nissan engineers gave us in the first place. I am looking forward to that. But overall, really happy with the build. Was going to wash the car today, but it's the Pacific Northwest. It's raining, even though it was sunny and 70 earlier today. So I'm going to wrap this up, and yeah, looking forward to posting some more videos about this, because the next big job I have is a clutch. I'm probably going to go with the Z1 package, lightweight flywheel and unsprung full face. I think I might go with the street. I could go with the mild too, but I don't plan on turboing this with how low a mileage it is. So yeah, I'm still kind of toying with what level of horsepower I need. I don't think I need to go above, I think, what is it rated, 550 or 600 horsepower. I don't need anything that skookum. Bayo will. Bayo already has it. I don't think I'm putting a supercharger on mine. If I do, I mean, I love the DE platform. I would probably get an HR or a VHR engine in a 370 format, or even a G37 would be a thought for doing a supercharger build. But on something low mileage like this, I kind of want to keep it as stock as possible. I want to net some gains. I want to get this up to and maybe a little above 300, but I also want to maintain the fact that it's 65,000 miles now. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. So the cold air intake, I've been driving for about, this is not a daily driver, but the times I've taken it out since I did the cold air intake, it's been about a week or two since I've installed it. And the ECU's definitely gotten used to the amount of airflow. It still dips a bit. I will have to get an EcuTech CE ECU at some point, which I was going to do when I upgrade the throttle body to the 75 mil. And I was going to do an exhaust system too. HKS or ARC2, it looks like they're both about the same. And Bayo and I were talking about it online. It seems like one of them ripped off the design of the other person, because they look identical, but the HKS is like $400 or $500 cheaper depending on where you look online. So probably going with the HKS, leaning that direction. If anybody has any input on the sound between the two, I've listened to a ton of audio clips, and everybody likes to take their microphone and just shove it up the tailpipe instead of actually getting some good audio and no clipping. So if anybody has their personal opinion on sound, let me know between HKS and the ARC2. for the 350Z. I am gonna go wrap this video up, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more videos on this car. It's been such a blast owning this, and at some point I'll get around to posting my whole video about the story of picking this up in Henderson and driving it all the way back home through Palm Springs and seeing bands play in the desert, and then going all the way up to San Francisco, seeing bands play there, and then coming all the way home to Seattle and seeing one of the bands that was at each of those locations play their own show, their own headlining show up in Seattle. That was an absolute blast. But I've got a bunch of video from that I need to edit and